So you're working in the construction window. At what point would you go to the mixer?
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, it's a difference with. I mean, the difference between the construction window and the mixer is that actually in the mixer you do the mixing, like you did on the console with EQs and compression and all that.
Right.
In the construction window, you do all the envelope and pitch, choosing drums. So let's go into the mixer and just play a small loop here with the default kit setup. And as you can see here, you have a mixer view. You have all the faders and everything, and you can solo a mic, listen to the room, for example.
So with this setup right here, this is behaving exactly as a real drum kit would coming up on a console.
Right. Bust out to two faders.
Yeah, and this is with, you can set it up so it can be as natural as a real drum kit is with all the bleed in every single drum.
Right.
And it would just come up as a normal drum kit.
Right.
But where we can get hyper real, the superior is that we can affect the bleeding and control the bleeding in any way you want on any drum through any mic.
Right.
And that's where, you can get into some other kind of control, not only to get a natural drum sound, but to do things that are really effecty and odd and quirky.
Yeah. So you can EQ, compress, gate, individual drums.
Exactly. As you can see here, on each channel, you have inserts. You have 5 inserts, and on which you can have EQ, filter, gate, compressor, transient designer. And you can put them in any order. I can put in EQ, for example, and then a compressor. Or I can just move the EQ after the compressor, so it gets in that order. I can also option click and drag and drop and copy it to another channel or on the same channel, stuff like that. And on each channel, you also have the buses, so you can send to a bus.
So you can group.
So you can send like the kick drum to another bus. You can send it to a bus that in turn has a side chain going on to another bus or whatever. You have all the routing capabilities that you have in Pro Tools.
Right, exactly. So if you wanted to take all 3 bass drum tracks and send them all to one bus, basically, and control them all in the same way, EQ them the same way, it'd be pretty easy to do.
Yeah. So I'm selecting 3 bass drums here, bass drum tracks, and sending them all to the bus 1 channel. And if I go to the bus 1 channel, I can send that out in turn to an output, such as output 1, 2.
Right.
And so now I have all 3 kick drums here.
Right.
On this channel. And I can also name the bus to kick, so I know that's a kick drum, and so on. So I can do that with snares and toms and cymbals and everything.
So I'm assuming that's how you would do a sub-squeeze of the entire kit. You would bust it out, put compressors on that channel.
Exactly.
Don't they call that the New York?
Do they?
Yeah, it's something from Power Station, from you guys that they call parallel, bus compression for the entire drum kit. It's something like the New York parallel compression. I don't know. Because you guys, I think you guys kind of pioneered some of that.
It's very easy.
I've been doing it for a while.
Easy. But I mean, as you can see now, I'm selecting all the channels.
Right.
And I'm going into one of the channels, whichever, it doesn't matter. Let's go into the last one. I select all the bleed in that channel, and I hit...
select all of them. Microphones,
And then when I start playing this screw, it's going to actually start loading the samples, in all the microphones.
Right. Now, should you go to cache mode at that point?
Yeah, I'm in cache mode right now because I just want to load the stuff.
Right.
So it'll only load all the bleed samples that are associated with now the kick, the cymbal, and the snare. So it's not loading any extra samples because there's no toms in this particular loop.
Exactly. So I can go into, let's go into the toms, for example, and listen to them. So here you have the bleed of the toms. And you might not want to have as much bleed in the tom mics.
Right.
So you might want to control and lower the volume of the actual bleed, which you do here. These buttons are for the bleeding.
And because he has those all grouped together, all the bleed knobs are grouped with it.
Exactly. So now I'm lowering the bleed, but I still have the toms.
Right.
The bleed is just lower.
Or I can group them just by selecting them?
Yeah. Or I can, of course, go into any...
Individual.
Let's go into, for example, the room mics here. One of the room mics, this is the ambience, the mid ambience mic.
Right.
And let's lower the hi-hat. So You know, you can lower any instrument in any microphone.
Or the old 80s technique would be, we'd use a room mic. We'd record the drums and the room mics and compress the room, like squash it really hard, and not have the drummer play any cymbals, and you'd overdub the cymbals.
Right.
So you could have like a really exaggerated compressed drum sound without the cymbals washing it all out. But now you can have it all in one performance and just take the cymbals out of any of those room mics.
Killer.
And what's more, you can definitely do much more than that. You can also take any microphone and send it to a bus, but you can select if you want to have the direct signal or the bleed, and you can also set the levels in between them, and you know, so you can do crazy stuff.
Right.
We actually have a preset that's called, I think it's called something about what is that? It's Let It Bleed. Let's load that and let's look what that does. As you can see, there's a lot of bus sends.
Right.
And we have like the direct signals and the bleed in different buses here. And so if I would play this,
it's loading, so it's loading all the samples in for that particular thing.
Cool.
So you're treating the direct signals different from the bleed.
So now we have one fader here, but the bleed only from all the microphones compressing.
Right.
So you can control that with one fader.
Right.
You know? So that's a pretty...
Process the bleed different from the direct sound.
But you don't have any bleed in the snare mic. You don't have it.
Right.
But you have the bleed here, which is, I mean, it's unreal. You can't do that in real life.
Right.
But that's a pretty cool way to do it. And obviously all the preset that we have is really a good starting point, since, I mean, Neil Dorfsman and Pat and myself have done a lot of presets, so you can actually learn how to mix drums, which is, I mean, a very useful thing for a lot of people.
They're good jumping off points, hopefully. For,
definitely.
You can definitely take them more out if you want to. But
or again, for songwriters that just want to get an instant sound and don't want to mess with any of the parameters, but just want to have great sounding drums in their demos. You know?
Exactly. And a fast way to do it as well is to go to the channel presets and choose anything here. Yeah. You have the kick presets, for example. You can go down and select the punch kick, and you get the EQ and the whatever.
And I gotta say, I'm sorry to interrupt, man, but I gotta say the EQ in this sounds really good. It's Sonalxus EQ?
Yeah, Sonalxus.
That's right.
Sonalxus, it's really good sounding EQ. And the compression. I mean,
and the transient designer, they did a great job on too.
Killer. I was knocked out.
It's fat.
Yeah.
Some of the other model transient designers sound kind of small.
Yeah.
You know? And this one, they kept like the thickness of the original deal in there.
So I'm assuming when you're bussing in this, there's no latency and no phase. Nothing to worry about.
It does all the delay compensation.
You're still, sorry, man. You're still monitoring within the application. You can monitor through Pro Tools if you want to by assigning these directly out to audio tracks.
Oh, yeah. You have 32
plugins
outputs
that you normally use in Pro Tools, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have 32 outputs. You have a bunch of buses. I mean, so you can do anything you want to, really. The busing is almost as complicated as Pro Tools is.
Right.
I mean, you can do everything you can do, but more. I mean, you have the bleed levels. You can, stuff like that you couldn't do in any program, because this is built obviously to manage that.
And each of these audio tracks are bussed out stereo. Generally,
they are. Everything is by default. Everything is bussed out to stereo 1-2.
Right. So, but when you bust them out to Pro Tools, you can assign them to individual tracks, right?
Yes.
You don't need a stereo track for a kick drum.
Yeah,
exactly.
I hate when that happens, when you have stereo kicks.
No, it'll be mono.
Yeah.
If you want it to be.
If you want it to be. I mean, it's your choice. It's a mono recording,
we recorded
as you know.
Monophonic.
So, definitely. I'm going to show one more thing here, which is a really cool thing. Let's play through the loop again. I'm going to play and show you another feature of the program.
So the idea of the envelope that's in the construct window and then the bleed control that you have in the mixer, they actually work independently of each other.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because when you're in the construct window, it's working directly with all the drums and working globally on the envelope of how much you're decaying or dampening the drum.
Right.
And that will affect every mic that's associated with that drum in the construct window. But so why don't you show them? Like if you dampen a drum, the drum's down.
Just as Pat was saying, I mean, if I go into the construct window and I select, let's select the kick and the toms and the snare drum, and just shorten the envelope. Make it really, really short on those drums.
Now that's affected it globally. That's shortened everything up. All the room, all the bleed mics, everything's been affected. So now, what if we want to have the room mics still? We want the room mics big, but keep the drums tight.
Yeah, exactly. So that you can do that by selecting all the ambience microphones. As you can hear, if I solve them, they are really short.
Right.
But I can make the tail longer by adding to the plus sign towards the plus sign on the fade.
And that's on the fade slider.
Slider
right,
in the mixer.
Right.
So now I'm getting the room, even though they are really short in all the other mics. So that's pretty unreal as well.
That's pretty scary.
Nice. Yeah.
The other way around, you can as well. I mean, let's deselect the envelope. Have long drums everywhere. I can now go into the ambience microphones only and make the ambience shorter.
Right.
And make it a smaller room, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Smaller room. So you can do stuff like that as well. So I mean, the options are really endless. And one more thing, let's keep it like this on all the microphones. But in the ambience mid, let's go and select everything from the hi-hat and down and keep the kick and the snare. Let's unload that. Let's go back to normal fade and have more volume on that. So now you have kick and snare coming amp mid, long tail, and the other room max is short. And you know,
which is absolutely impossible in the real world.
Yeah. And is there a default click command for getting that back to?
Yeah, it's the same
command.
It's Apple.
Apple,
on a Apple computer.
So command click, right? Okay, that'll return it to normal. Okay, that's great.